whatever way I'm doing it, I'm making or rather some justice I've done to it. So the responsibility is entrusted to me. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Can we begin with a small prayer? Heavenly and gracious Father, thank you so much for this beautiful day. Father, thank you for this opportunity that you allowed us to be here to dwell upon your words. We want to submit this time to you, Lord Jesus Christ, and submit ourselves unto your feet, everyone who is present over here. Father, let your spirit guide us, Father. Let not our wisdom or our thought process take over, but speak through us, Father. Guide us so that what you want us to understand through these verses, let it come to our hearts, Father. Once again, we submit everybody who is present over here and those who are not able to make it today, Lord, in your mighty hands. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Anybody who wants to read this passage?
I can read.
Thanks, Anson.
The Gospel according to Saint Matthew, chapter 24, verses 42 to 51. Watch therefore, you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the household has known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have watched and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has set over his household, to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant, whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and eats and drinks with the drunken, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will punish him, and put him with the hypocrites. There men will weep and gnash their teeth.
Thank you, Anson. And at the hindsight, I feel like the portion doesn't need a lot of explanation to the readers or to the one who is actually going through this, because it's very crystal clear what God is trying to tell us through this verse, or rather what Matthew is trying to put across to all of us. I think I was just trying to get certain background in what circumstances Matthew was trying to say this to people around at that point in time. It is believed that the book of or rather the Gospel according to Saint Matthew was written nearly about 80 AD, and uh, one of the reasons why this particular message is important at that point in time is that we all know that it speaks about the second coming of Christ. And when you say the second coming of Christ, I think 2022 years down the line, we are still uh, hoping and we hope and we believe that Christ is going to come. But at that point in time, after Jesus was risen, or when these discussions were going around, one of the key components for all the disciples and the followers of Christ was that they anticipated or they expected Christ to come immediately. But 70, 80 years down the line, I think there was some kind of complacency which came up, and the hope, or rather, the weight started to diminish. The most faithful ones, or rather the one who even saw Jesus, or rather who saw the disciples or the apostles working at that point in time, slowly and gradually it started to move away. So that was one of the times when Matthew wanted to put this across, that the complacency has started to creep in. I've done some kind of research on this. I'm not very sure how true it is, but then it looks like this was one of the reasons why Matthew wrote this. But if you look at the first verse, watch therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. This watch therefore or be careful is pretty significant across the New Testament. So just trying to figure out certain verses from the New Testament. But if you look at Luke in his book, he writes, "Be always on the watch and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man." Paul, in his letter to Colossae, writes, "Masters, give your servants what is just and fair." And this again, if you look at the portion which we read, there also it is mentioned something related to the leaders. So here he is again putting it across. "Masters, give your servants what is just and fair, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. Continue earnestly in prayer, being vigilant in it by thanksgiving." Peter also mentions this. "Be sober minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour." Again, Paul writes this to the people of Corinthia. "Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong." John writes it, "Wake up and strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your work complete in the sight of my God. Again, behold, I am coming like a thief." Very similar to what we have just read in Matthew. In fact, even Peter says the same thing. Paul says the same thing. "Behold, I am coming like a thief." What Jesus has quoted. "Blessed is on one who stays awake, keeping his garment on, that they may not go about naked and be seen exposed." Paul again to the people of Ephesia, "Praying at all times in the Spirit, with all prayer and supplication, to that end keep alert with all perseverance." The book, or rather the chapter 24 and 25, I've just taken, in fact, I've also taken the context of chapter 23 as well in my presentation today, that this is how it is divided, specifically chapter 24 and 25, where Jesus is talking about the temple which will get destroyed. And we see historically that eventually it gets destroyed. The disciples, the close, net, or rather the close group of disciples at a mountain, they ask Jesus these two questions: when is it going to happen? What is going to happen? And Jesus answers the what by way of the tribulations, the second coming. Jesus answers the when by offering the parable of the fig tree, illustrations of the days of Noah, illustrations of the two servants, and then he goes up to the chapter 25. Jesus predicts judgment at his coming, which we saw as see again in the last portion of chapter 24. Parable of the 10 virgins, what happens to them? Parable of the talents, what happens to those, or the one who is not behaved in the manner in which he was expected to behave, and judgment of the Gentiles. So I just try to break this down into the things which I've just shown. Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple. Now, when he is telling about this destruction, there is a reference to it. Why suddenly he speaks about the destruction? So for that, I just went back to chapter 23, and what I saw is that he characterizes Pharisees. The Pharisees, all we know what level of people they were. And the entire 23 says like this: "And Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach." Again, this is related to that verse: "Masters, be careful about what you do with your followers." That's what we read in chapter 24. Here again it says, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you." Which means whatever they are teaching you, Jesus is not trying to say that it is wrong. He says everything what they teach is right. But unfortunately, whatever they are preaching, they are not practicing. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulder, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make I think phylacteries is kind of they do some kind of activity, like we have kurbana, and achans and tirmenis, they do a certain act. I think it is related to that. Wide and tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor of at banquets, and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. Likewise, if you look at the entire chapter 23, he is trying to identify the qualities of Pharisees, or the so-called Jews at that point in time, and is trying to say or tell people that how the law is written and how it is preached. At the same time, the preachers, what are they practicing in their real lives. At a later stage in chapter 23, we see Jesus confronting these Pharisees by telling them that you are hypocrites. And the same thing which we see in chapter 24 also at the later stage, when he's trying to tell those masters that you will be put in the company of hypocrites because you're not following what you've been interested. So it's very important to go through chapter 23, why Jesus is talking about or predicting the destruction of temple. In a way, yes, at that point in time, the discussion was about Jerusalem, the temple of Jerusalem, which is expected to be destroyed. But if we look at in real purview, or in today's time, what is the temple of God? It is our hearts. How are we containing it, or how are we managing it? To what level we are managing it? Is there a deterioration that what we speak outside, that is not there inside? What we show outside, the outer face, is not we are really in. Probably that's one message what I try to bring it over here. Chapter 24, the verse 3, where there is a small discussion. It's a very, very small discussion which takes place between the apostles and Jesus. And this is on the Mount of Olives. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? Now, this is in relation with the end times. When are you going to come back? What is going to happen? What are the signs, which we must, look at? And when will this happen? And what we will see, the coming end of the end and the end of the age, which we all been referring to, we Christians believe. And these are the verses, Jesus replies that do not get carried away with all this. Watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such thing must happen, but the end is still to come. Exactly what is happening during these times, and probably in the past also. And we hear a lot of people coming and telling us that the end time is here, the end time is here. But Jesus is very categorical that no, do not get deceived. Then there is another way of putting it. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated. Many will turn away from faith and will betray. Love of most will grow cold. I think the first part, or the experience of the verses 4 to 6 and all, or rather until 8, we have heard this in the past. We have seen that those things have not really moved to a level that we can start believing that the end time has come. But one thing which always have caught me aware, or rather touched my soul, is that how are we going to react in an event of persecution? I do not know how many of you were able to see a recent incident in Karnataka, where I think all of you are aware that there's a huge issue going on in the state of Karnataka with respect to hijab. The Muslim girls are not allowed to, or rather they've been told not to wear hijab or burqa when they come to school. And there's a lot of issue which is coming up. And this right wing, they're putting in a lot of pressure, and they're really trying to overwhelm people who are doing it. And this one incident which really touched my heart was this young girl, or all of you must have seen that his he is confronting them by saying Allahu Akbar when the others have started chanting Jai Shri Ram. How dangerous it was, or rather, there could have been a lot of implication. But I would rather, I was thinking, and I was talking to my wife, if tomorrow something like this come to us, Christians, how would we react? What would we be doing in that case? Whether we will be able to stand firm and say, no, I still believe in Jesus. It really touched me. That girl was, for me, it was a courageous act. She's very brave, and it really needed a lot of courage to do that. Verse 10 says, many will turn away from faith and will betray. Love of most will grow cold. Today we are not in a position to even stand beside a fellow Christian in an event where he or she needs our help. So I think we are moving now to the second phase. The first phase is a regular routine and a regular affair which we keep seeing across countries. Everywhere we see that. But now what we are seeing is the second part of it. This is what I was trying to put across. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with the drunken, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour he does not know, and will punish him. So this is related to the end result. But if you look at the first side, it's been very, very prevalent. Claiming to be prophets, claiming that the end time is near, treatment by leaders of the church, we've all discussed. But the second part is where I want to dwell sometime, or rather I want to throw this to the to my fellow listeners, that is there a second coming? Are we moving to a stage of hopelessness? Do we really have this belief anymore in our hearts that Jesus is going to come back? Is the approach, towards that of ours have become casual? I think this is something which I really want to discuss with all of you. This is my personal feeling that deep inside our heart, do we really believe that Jesus is going to come back? Because so many years we've been waiting. How is it, whether our children or the generations down the line is going to accept this fact that Jesus is going to come back? And if at all, how do we really wait unto him? And moving to a stage today, we have already started moving to that stage, that many of us don't want to stand by faith. Many of them have just given up. I already mentioned that growing cold in love and faith. The most important thing, not utilizing the ministry what we've been offered by Christ. Everybody is, like the master, the one who has been given the responsibility. Like if you look at chapter 25, the parable of the 10 virgin and the parable of the talents, what happens there is that they've been offered something, specifically the parable of the talent, that God entrusts them with certain talents, or other, some kind of investment is put into these talents, and they are expected to make good of that talent, or they are expected to really work on those talents. But we see that it is not happening. And in the end, like those virgins, who go back and keep requesting that please allow us to get in, and they were not invited, or they were not allowed. Is that what, the men will weep and gnash their teeth? I think these are very harsh words, extremely harsh words. What I can put it across in a mild way is that we will really get overwhelmed the day of judgment, and would be very, very difficult to probably justify ourselves or our act, if we have failed to really work on the talents what we have been entrusted. So these are the few points which I wanted to put it across. It's easy to understand what Jesus is trying to tell us, but I'm very sure it's not only about such easiness. There's a lot of other things which all of you can bring to this. I wanted to keep it simple for the understanding of everyone, but I'm sure that there would be much more coming in from all of you. Just wanted to end. Be watchful until he comes, because we need to have this hope that there is a second coming. Thank you.